Did you know that our grandparents' gardens produced 2 or even 3 times more than modern gardens, even without chemical fertilizers, expensive pesticides, or advanced technology? While today people struggle with weak plants, constant pests, and poor yields, our ancestors enjoyed abundant gardens using simple, yet completely forgotten, secrets. In this video, I will reveal the ancient gardening secrets that allowed them to achieve such incredible abundance, techniques that are practically lost but outperform any modern method. Stick around until the end, because I'll also share the most powerful technique of all, the one my grandmother used to grow tomatoes the size of footballs. Now tell me this, have you ever visited an elderly person's garden and been amazed by the size and beauty of their plants? While your plants might struggle, theirs seem to burst with vigor and productivity. What's their secret? I've spent years observing, questioning, and from these seasoned gardeners, and I discovered they use techniques that modern agriculture has largely abandoned in favor of costly and often less effective chemical solutions. These are simple methods, rooted in observing nature and decades of practical experience. My grandfather, for example, had a garden of less than 50 square meters that fed his entire family year-round, with plenty left over to sell. This wasn't luck or some magical soil. It was applied knowledge, and this knowledge is available to anyone willing to learn. Today, I want to share these exact forgotten secrets that can transform your own garden. Let's begin with the first forgotten secret, arguably the most important of all, forming the foundation of every productive ancient garden. Intelligent plant association, also known as companion planting. Our grandparents never planted a single crop in isolation. They always strategically mixed several plants. Modern gardens are often organized into separate rows by crop, tomatoes in one area, lettuce in another, carrots in yet another. While this might appear organized, it's biologically impoverished. In nature, plants grow together, and this diversity creates balance. My grandfather, for instance, planted corn, beans, and squash together in the same bed. This is the famous Three Sisters trio, used by indigenous peoples for millennia. The corn provides a stalk for the beans to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, nourishing the other plants, and the squash covers the ground, suppressing weeds and retaining moisture. Each plant benefits the others in a perfect symbiosis that increases the total bed productivity by at least 50% compared to planting each separately. Another classic association is tomatoes with basil and marigolds. Basil repels aphids and whiteflies that attack tomatoes, while marigolds attract beneficial insects that prey on pests. The tomato grows vertically, while basil and marigolds occupy the soil below. This allows for 3 crops in the space of 1, with natural pest protection. I started applying intelligent planting associations 3 years ago, and my productivity dramatically increased. Where I once harvested 10 kilograms of tomatoes per season, I now collect 15 to 20 kilograms. Where I had constant aphid problems, I now rarely see pests. The key is in understanding which plants mutually benefit each other and which compete. Leguminous plants fix nitrogen, benefiting leafy greens that require nitrogen. Aromatic plants repel pests, protecting their neighbors. Deep-rooted plants draw up nutrients that shallow-rooted plants cannot reach. The second forgotten secret ensured that ancient gardens were practically free of pests without using any poisons. Maximum diversity in flowering borders. My grandmother always had flowers planted around and within the garden, and this wasn't just for aesthetics. Flowers attract beneficial insects like ladybugs, lacewings, parasitic wasps, and hoverflies. These insects are natural predators of aphids, caterpillars, scale insects, and other garden pests. When you have abundant flowers, you essentially have an army of natural guardians protecting your garden. Marigolds, cosmos, sunflowers, zinnias, pansies, and nasturtiums don't just beautify. They act as lures and shelters for beneficial insects, and many have additional functions. Marigolds, for example, repel soil nematodes, while nasturtiums can serve as trap crops, luring aphids away from your main plants, which you can then sacrifice. My grandfather had an entire bed of sunflowers surrounding his garden. He used to say that sunflowers attracted birds that ate caterpillars, and he was right. Sunflowers drew in insectivorous birds, naturally controlling pests. Nowadays, people often desire neat, flowerless, clean gardens, which then makes them dependent on pesticides because they've eliminated natural predators. This is working against nature's instead of with it. I transformed my own garden by adding flowering borders to all my beds. I planted marigolds, cosmos, and nasturtiums along the edges, and the difference was remarkable. Pest problems decreased by at least 70%. I rarely need to intervene because the ecosystem largely self-regulates. Now for the third forgotten secret, which made the soil of ancient gardens incredibly fertile without any chemical fertilizers: rigorous crop rotation and the use of green manures. My grandfather never planted the same crop in the same spot 2 years in a row. Crop rotation prevents soil depletion and the buildup of specific diseases and pests. Each plant family extracts different nutrients and attracts different pests. When you repeatedly plant the same thing in the same place, you exhaust specific nutrients and create a perfect environment for specialized pests. My grandfather divided his garden into 4 zones and rotated annually. Year 1, fruiting plants like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. Year 2, root vegetables such as carrots, beets, and radishes. Year 3, leafy greens like lettuce, cabbage, and arugula. Year 4, legumes like beans, peas, and green beans. In the 5th year, he would return to fruiting plants in the first zone. Between main crops, he would plant green manures. After harvesting tomatoes, for instance, he would sow velvet bean or mucuna, which grew quickly, covering the soil. When these plants were in flower, he would cut them down and incorporate them into the soil. This rich biomass transformed into fertility. Green manures fix nitrogen from the air, draw deep soil nutrients into their roots and leaves, improve soil structure, and suppress weeds. It's a free and incredibly effective fertilization method. I implemented rigorous rotation in green manures 2 years ago, and my garden soil has dramatically improved. It has become darker, looser, and more vibrant, and productivity has increased without me adding any purchased fertilizers. The soil now fertilizes itself through natural cycles. The 4th forgotten secret concerns water, the garden's most precious resource. Our grandparents knew how to conserve water and irrigate far more efficiently than modern methods. They used thick mulching and deep, infrequent watering. Mulch is a layer of organic material on the soil: straw, dry grass, fallen leaves, wood chips, and bark. This layer protects the soil from direct sun, dramatically reduces evaporation, maintains a stable temperature, and gradually adds fertility as it decomposes. Ancient gardens always had covered soil. You never saw bare earth exposed to the sun. This meant they needed much less water, as moisture was retained in the soil for days after each watering. Today, people often water superficially every day because exposed soil dries out quickly. This wastes water and encourages shallow roots, making plants weak and dependent. My grandfather watered thoroughly only twice a week, soaking the soil deeply. This forced roots to grow deep in search of water, making the plants resilient and independent. With a thick layer of mulch, the soil maintained moisture between waterings. I have fully adopted this method. I cover all my beds with a 10-centimeter layer of straw and water deeply only twice a week, more in summer, less in winter. My water consumption has decreased by half, and my plants have become stronger and healthier. Their roots now extend 30 to 40 centimeters deep. Plants with deep roots withstand drought periods, resist wind better, and access more nutrients. This is the fundamental difference between dependent plants and self-sufficient ones. The 5th forgotten secret reveals the perfect timing our grandparents mastered. They planted by observing the moon, the climate, and nature's signs, not arbitrary calendars. This made an enormous difference in germination and productivity. My grandmother never planted anything without observing the moon. She would say, "Leaves on the waxing moon, roots on the waning moon, fruits on the new moon." This might have seemed like superstition, but modern science is beginning to discover that the moon truly affects germination and growth. Leafy plants planted during the waxing moon germinate more vigorously and grow faster. Root vegetables planted during the waning moon develop larger, stronger roots. Fruiting plants planted during the new moon produce more abundantly. Beyond the moon, they also observed nature's signs. My grandfather would say, "When the silk floss tree blooms, it's time to plant corn." When certain birds arrived, it signaled the right temperature for planting tomatoes. When a particular tree budded, it was time to plant beans. These natural indicators are more precise than calendars because they respond to the actual climate of the region. There are no fixed dates, as conditions can vary from year to year. Nature knows the right moment, and observing it is wiser than following rigid rules. I started observing these patterns 3 years ago. I note when certain plants flower, when specific birds arrive, and when the rains begin, and I plant based on these signs instead of fixed dates. The success rate of my plantings has visibly improved, with fewer losses due to unexpected cold, fewer problems from unforeseen drought, and better synchronization with the natural rhythm of the seasons. The sixth forgotten secret is about cultivating living soil, not just dirt. Our grandparents understood that healthy soil teems with life, earthworms, insects, fungi, and bacteria, and they actively nurtured this life. They never tilled the soil deeply. Deep tilling kills earthworms, destroys soil structure, and exposes beneficial microorganisms to the sun, which kills them. Instead, they worked the soil only superficially, loosening just the top few centimeters, and constantly added organic matter. All kitchen scraps, animal manure, fallen leaves, everything returned to the soil. This wasn't just fertilization, it was feeding the soil life itself. My grandfather used to say that earthworms are indicators of healthy soil, and he cared for them as he cared for his plants. He never used poisons that would harm them, and always added organic matter that would nourish them. Living soil is fertile, loose, well-drained, yet retains moisture. Microorganisms decompose organic matter, making nutrients available to plants. Fungi form intricate networks that connect roots and transfer nutrients. It's a complex and wondrous ecosystem. Today, modern agriculture often treats soil as an inert substrate that needs chemical fertilizers. This approach goes against biology and leads to dead, compacted soil dependent on costly inputs. I transformed my soil by focusing on life. I stopped deep tilling and I constantly add compost and mulch. The results are visible. Earthworms everywhere, dark, healthy-smelling soil, and vigorous plants that require little additional fertilizer. The seventh forgotten secret involves a practice ancient gardeners engaged in that is almost completely abandoned today: saving and selecting seeds from the best plants. My grandfather never bought seeds, he always saved them from his own plants. And not just any seeds. Throughout the season, he would mark the most vigorous, productive, flavorful, and pest-resistant plants, and he would save seeds exclusively from these champion specimens. Year after year, generation after generation, he selected and genetically improved his varieties. The plants became increasingly adapted to the specific climate of the region, the unique soil of his garden, and the particular conditions of his location. Tomatoes that thrive in Sao Paulo might not grow well in Curitiba or Recife. But if you save seeds from plants that produce well in your specific location, within a few years, you'll have perfectly adapted varieties. My grandfather had his own varieties that performed far better than any commercial hybrid, because they had been adapted for decades. He shared these seeds with neighbors and family, spreading excellent genetics. Today, people buy hybrid seeds every year that cannot be reproduced. This creates total dependence on the industry, and resilient adapted heirloom varieties are being lost. I started saving seeds 3 years ago. I mark the best tomato, pepper, squash, and lettuce plants. I allow a few fruits to ripen completely, then extract, dry, and store the seeds. I plant these seeds the following year, and with each generation, my plants become better, more adapted, more productive, and more flavorful. I am creating my own varieties, and I will never again depend on buying seeds. But wait, because now comes the information I promised at the beginning. The most powerful technique my grandmother used, which grew giant tomatoes. The secret method my grandmother employed to cultivate enormous, abundant tomatoes was something she called deep planting with fish below. I know it sounds strange, but it works impressively. When she was about to plant tomato seedlings, she would dig very deep holes, 40 to 50 centimeters. At the bottom of the hole, she would place fish scraps, heads, bones, guts. She would cover these with a layer of soil and then plant the tomato seedling deeply, burying it up to the first set of leaves. The fish would decompose slowly, releasing nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, and other nutrients in a readily available form. And because it was deep, it nourished the plant throughout the entire growing season. Planting the tomato deeply also encouraged the buried stem to create adventitious roots all along its length. A plant that started with only 10 centimeters of root would end up with a 30 to 40 centimeter root system. More extensive roots mean a stronger plant, more nutrition, more water, and greater production. My grandmother's tomatoes were legendary in the neighborhood. Some weighed over 1 kilogram each, enormous, red, juicy, and flavorful, and she produced crates upon crates with every harvest. I tested this technique 2 years ago. I used fish scraps that I obtained for free from a fishmonger. I dug deep holes, placed the fish, covered it with soil, and planted the tomatoes deeply. The results were spectacular. My tomato plants grew enormous, with stems as thick as my thumb, lush, dark green foliage, and production was twice what I had previously achieved. large, uniform, flavorful tomatoes. It was transformative. The technique works because it combines several principles: deep, slow-release fertilization, stimulation of an extended root system, and balanced nutrition rich in proteins and minerals from the fish. And you don't need to use fish specifically. It can be chicken scraps, bones, shrimp shells, any animal protein that decomposes slowly. The principle remains the same: deep, rich fertilization. This technique, along with all the other secrets I've shared, represents the kind of ancestral knowledge that is being lost, but is infinitely superior to modern industrialized methods. But there's even more wisdom to uncover. Beyond these, let me share a few more precious secrets from ancient gardens that are well worth knowing. The eighth secret is the use of wood ash as a potassium fertilizer and pH regulator. My grandfather saved all the ash from his wood stove and spread it on the beds, knowing it was rich in potassium, calcium, and micronutrients. The ninth secret involves using vegetable cooking water as liquid fertilizer. My grandmother never threw out the water from boiling potatoes or other vegetables. She let it cool and used it for watering. The dissolved nutrients became a free beneficial fertilizer. The 10th secret is companion planting with repellent aromatic plants. Garlic, onions, mint, and rue were strategically planted to naturally deter pests without any poisons. The 11th secret highlights well-drained, raised beds. Ancient gardens always featured slightly raised beds that drained perfectly, preventing fungal diseases and root rot. And finally, the 12th secret is patience and constant observation. Our grandparents spent time in their gardens every day, observing, adjusting, and learning. It wasn't just work, it was a deep connection, and this attentiveness made all the difference. Have you grasped the wisdom? All these secrets I've shared today are based on working with nature, not against it. These methods respect biology, natural cycles, and ecosystems, which is why they work better and cost less than modern industrialized approaches. Ancient gardens produced so abundantly because gardeners understood fundamental principles. Diversity creates stability, living soil creates fertility, water used wisely creates resilience, selected seeds create adaptation, and constant observation creates knowledge. None of this is complicated, none of it is costly. Yet, it has all been forgotten in favor of quick chemical solutions that create dependence and degrade the environment. It is time to rediscover this wisdom. So let's quickly recap: intelligent plant association, maximum diversity with flowering borders, rigorous crop rotation with green manures, thick mulching with deep, infrequent watering, observation of the moon and nature's signs, cultivating living soil, seed selection and saving, and deep fertilization with rich organic matter. These are the secrets of ancient gardens that allowed them to produce 2 or even 3 times more than modern gardens. And you can apply all of them starting today. Now, I want to hear from you. Did your grandparents have a garden? Do you remember any special secrets or techniques they used? Or where will you start applying these techniques in your own garden? Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them and love discovering ancestral wisdom and memories. If this video has rekindled valuable knowledge you didn't know, please hit the like button. It tells me you want more content on traditional techniques that truly work. And if you haven't subscribed to Sovereign Garden yet, subscribe now and activate the bell. Do you know what's coming in the next video? I'm going to show you how to set up a complete garden using only ancient techniques, completely chemical-free, sustainable, and extremely productive. It's a full project from scratch, so make sure to activate the bell to receive that notification. Thank you for joining me. Remember, new isn't always better. Sometimes the old is ancient because it has worked for generations. Rediscovering ancestral wisdom is about honoring those who came before us and ensuring abundance for those who come after. Cultivate with peace, and I'll see you in our next video.